Welcome back. You're watching Standpoint here on Morning Prime. We continue past with the conversation on the finance bill. Remember, this is a big week. We have the resumption of Parliament tomorrow, and that will be a full in tray when everyone will be keeping their eyes peeled and keeping out their ears to listen in to how that will transpire on the floor of the House as far as passing this bill is concerned. The President has been very categorical: like it or lump it, this bill has to sail through. They have no options as far as the Kenya Kwanza legislators are concerned, and he'll be eagerly awaiting to see who will vote against this. Does this really smack or shows any smartings of dictatorship? We have civil society organizations who have also spoken quite movingly around it, saying the President is being or showing some traits of dictatorship. But let's listen in what really transpired during the weekend as far as this finance bill is concerned from various legislators. Let's have this soapbox.
Usi munasema hamuna walimu ya kutosha. Tumeandika 35,000 teachers. We need to pay them. Tunataka kuandika wengine 35,000 next year. Lazima tuwalipe. Hiyo pesa itachukuliwa kwa wananchi. That is the truth. So, as much as tunapiga siasa na kufanya maandamano na kuweka sufuria kwa kichwa, people, we must collect taxes to finance our development expenditure, to finance our recurrent expenditure. Tumesema hiyo maneno ya kukopa haiwezekani tena, kwa sababu ukijipata kwa shimo ndani huwezi kuendelea kuchimba. Unasimamisha kuchimba ndio uangalie vile unaweza fanya nini. Sasa tusipochukua ushuru, mheshimiwa, itabidi tukope, na tukikopa lazima tulipe.
I want to encourage all of us here, especially my good friends in the private sector, that it is important for us collectively to think about how we are going to create opportunities for the 800,000, 1 million young people will churn out every year.
It's my prayer and hope that when we resume sittings next week, we will leave the drama out there. You have done your bit in misinforming and disinforming Kenyans and misinterpreting what is before the House. Now, when you come to the House, come armed with your facts and your figures.
We need hii kitu ifanywe haraka, na mimi nimeambia wabunge wenzangu tukirudi bungeni, kwa sababu nimeona pia media yote iko hapa, mjue ya kwamba hii kitu sisi tutapitisha, na nilisema na nirudie, serikali haishindwi.
Don't mind about a few errand ones. You can never have 100%. Tufanye kazi, tubadilishe nchi yetu, tuboreshe nchi yetu.
Unataka kuniambia hata wewe ungekuwa Raila na unaona Ruto anaenda kuchukua ushuru ambaye akipata atabadilisha maisha ya mwananchi, atapata vijana wale wako chini wainue juu kama vile ulikuwa umesema bottom up, ungekaa na umunge mkono? So ungeweka fitina kama vile yeye pia anaweka hii fitina yake.
Housing will create jobs. Housing will create opportunity. It will spur the economy of Kenya. It will create jobs in our factories, in cement factories, in steel factories. It will create jobs for the urban sector. Mimi nangojea wale wabunge watakuwa ukule bunge, ni tuwaone kwa macho kwamba wao wanapinga ati ajira ya hawa vijana ambao waliwapigia kura. Wanapinga mpango wa manyumba ya hawa wangwana.
Sentiments there from the legislators and the President regarding the finance bill. And just to remind you, I'm holding court this morning with a member of Parliament of Kamukunji. This is Yusuf Hassan. Also, we have with us the CS Tourism. This is Wilson Susion. Also, Senior Counsel of Congo Mogani, who is a Senator of Nyamira, and will be joined momentarily. I think he slept through the alarm. He arrived very late, early in the morning, 3 a.m. from Tana River. This is Danson Mungatana will be joining us momentarily as well. But you heard it from the legislators so far. This week, as I've mentioned, is a resumption of Parliament. Okongo Mogini. We have Azimio saying they have a plan up their collective sleeves. We wonder what will pan out to be in Parliament because you're plotting war on tax law, as Gachagua tells of also opponents. Some of the dailies have published that particular sentiment. What is your reaction, especially listening to what the legislators are saying? And of more concern is we have the Speaker of the National Assembly who has given also his sentiment regarding this. I thought it's supposed to be neutral.
Yes, first Dibala, I have a lot of sympathy for the headline, the one I had Sosion responding to, and accusing the media.
Which headline?
Hyping emotions.
The Daily Nation, okay.
They used me.
They used me.
You know, the Sosion, Honorable Sosion is being extremely out of touch with the reality. Because if you read the story of this poor lady, whom I really sympathize with, and I wish I can trace her and make a small donation. You know, this poor lady is telling you in that caption, I cannot even plan what to eat in the evening because I have nothing. And you know, you have a government minister in this show who is dismissing this Kenyan, and there are many. Instead of even empathizing and sympathizing, he's very dismissive and you know, with bravado saying, we don't care about that lady, we don't expect the president to stoop too low to look for this useless mama. He has busy things. He has busy things to do. You know, you don't lead. Please allow me
Let
to
him finish.
respond.
You'll respond.
You don't lead a country that way. You must feel the suffering of the poor, of the poorest. And you know, you may think that today we are privileged, but you know, Dibal, I tried to juxtaposition and say, how would I feel if this was my own mother? If nation has done what they have done, we should actually applaud the newspaper for highlighting the suffering of these Kenyan, and there are many of them. We encounter these people every day, Dibal. And if you talk to many of them, they will tell you even the social protection stipend that was being paid to this category of Kenyans is not there. They will tell you that they are going to hospitals with NHIF cards that are no longer being honored by our hospitals. They are telling you that they are genuinely scared that if you increase the 8% tax on fuel, life will become unbearable. If she is telling you today that she does not know where our next meal will come from, what will happen next, Dibal? We must listen. These are the people who ordinarily turn out and vote for us. But if you have a government that is coming to a media show and dismiss this kind of, and try to paint media in the negative side, instead of actually applauding that you have highlighted this, you are having a government that is out of touch with the reality on the ground. And when it will come to hit you, Sosion, the government will not have anywhere to hide. So I sympathize with this lady and many other Kenyans, and I agree what you have said. They feel used and abandoned. There is no program that is ongoing that is for the benefit of the poor. I like my friend the Sosion. I have nothing against him and I wish him well. Him is happy because he was remembered immediately. Would have formed the government, they nominated him, made him a cast, he's happy. But what about these poor people down there? What can the government come to this show and say, we took over and this is how we have gone back to look at the interests, the concerns, the suffering of Mama Mboga, the Asra nation? Nothing. Instead, what is in this proposed finance bill is just a scheme to punish, in fact, to kill the hustlers. So, Dibal, I still want to urge the president to get out of his comfort zone and understand. Let him have his ear on the ground to know what's going on. Now, coming back to the question you have posed, of course, I'm sure Mheshimiwa here will tell you that the Speaker of National Assembly, the Speaker of the Senate should be a neutral arbiter. That's how our constitution is structured. Unlike in the US where you have the winning party forming, that forms government as a majority, electing a speaker from that particular party, like Kevin McCarthy now is from the Republicans, he can be partisan. But in our case, we expect the speaker to be neutral and conduct the business of the House in a bipartisan manner. And I hope really the comments he made were not deep. I hope that is the situation. But going back to the debate on the table, you know, let's not have this this kind of narrative being developed that Azimio is opposed to taxation. Far from it. When we were in this show last week, Honorable Sosion spent almost half the time of this show to tell Kenyans that the 3% housing levy is not a taxation. So you cannot mix it telling us here that we are opposing government tax processes. No. Dibal, what we are opposing is this levy here that is being marketed as a levy, but what the government is looking for is 9 billion collection every month to pay foreign debt. And I want to tell Mheshimiwa, my good friend MP for Kamukunji, that you cannot come with a policy where you want to collect 9 billion and promise more than 35 million Kenyans who have no houses that you are going to give them homes. People who are poor, who have no earnings, Dibal. It cannot work. What we are telling the government is that if you increase 8% VAT on fuel, the trickle-down effect on services and goods will be terrible. You're going to see fuel hit 200 per litre. And once that happens, the cost of hunger, sugar, bread will skyrocket. And those are the Kenyans that we are protecting. 8%, the implication will be that fuel will go up by 13 shillings per litre. The landing cost of fuel in the country is 1 or 2 shillings. But the pump price is 192. And you now want to add another burden on Kenyans. That is too much taxation. That's what we are telling the government. We are also telling the government that issues like putting tax on VAT, on insurance compensation. Dibal, imagine you have had an accident in an industry where a hustler is hustling. Your hand has been chopped off. You go to court, you file a compensation claim, you are paid 200,000 because you lost your arm. The government is saying we're giving you, the insurance company is saying we're giving you money to assist you survive for the remainder of the years you are in this world. You pay your lawyer like 30%. Now the government wants to raid the pockets of that poor Kenyan and take away another 16%. So this person will lose 46% of that compensation. And we are saying that is being very, very insensitive. There are very good tax proposals in this finance bill, like proposal to tax those who earn over 500,000, 35%. Nobody is opposed. There were proposals to protect the rich in this country. If you want to protect the rich, you want VAT to be removed on choppers, we have no problem. But the clauses that are going to hurt Mwananchi, Dibal, that's what we are opposed to. So don't build this narrative that cannot sell, that we are totally opposed to any tax proposals by the government. What we are saying is that the bad ones must be removed. Dibal, you have been told about Moi era transiting to Kibaki. You never had Kibaki increase tax on Kenyans. Yet, his policies allowed Kenyans to walk to the banks and borrow money with no security. You were able to go, you borrow 500, you would borrow up to 500,000. There are countries, you can Google. In Australia, Dibal, the government supports people to buy houses, first home owners. But they don't do it through taxing Australians. What they do, they support first home owners. If you raise some money, the government will add you 10,000 Australian dollars to have a top-up, because we don't want also a lazy country. If the government was to come with a proposal saying we want austerity measures, reduce cabinet administrative secretaries, why are you filing 50 of them? You can have 20, and I'm sure Sosion will be among them because it's one of the most effective. You have 20 cars, even 15. The rest you tell them to go home so that we save money. Dubai. We will not have a problem, but you cannot tell us that you want to tax us so that you pay 52 cars. That's being very insensitive to Kenyans, Dibal, and we will not accept. You're telling us, yesterday I was pushed off the road by a minister who had 3 vehicles. 3. That is wastage. If I was President Uhuru, if you put those austerity measures, you will raise the 9 billion that he wants in
President Ruto.
President William Ruto. Because, this housing levy is targeting to raise 9 billion every month from Kenyans. This is money that the government can save from the wastage, the corruption that we see. Even this story we are being told about in Singapore. Singapore has been able to do what it has done because there is zero tolerance on corruption.
Thank you.
And they also don't tax people. They don't tax people to support Singaporeans to buy houses. They do it through a fund. Not through a taxation on your payslip.
This one is a fund.
Right.
Not through, no, not a
This is a
fund.
fund.
There
It's
is
merely-
nothing is taken
it's
from
merely
a
a
payslip
check-off.
of a
This is
Singaporean.
check-off.
Nothing is taken from the
check-off
payslip
remittance
of a
to a
Singaporean.
fund.
What we are telling the government is that, and this cuts across the board. Let me tell you, a teacher in Bomet, a teacher in Nyamira, does not want the government to raid their pocket and take money away from them. That's what you want to. This is not about politics, it's not about Ruda or Azimio. Kenyans are simply saying you cannot raid our pockets to take more money.
Thank you.
And you know when we began the ball, Azimio had 180 MPs. UDA had 162. But because I think the president was planning ahead, he raided us and took away our friends in Jubilee who are with us to increase the number so that they push this kind of unpopular legislations through the House. That is an affront to democracy.
Thank you.
If people shift positions and you want to support the agenda of the other side, we say that's fine. But resign and seek fresh mandate from the people.
All right, and of course we have a good illustration of the star there, how Ruto Raila numbers will play out in the National Assembly. Just to run you by it, Kenya Kwanza camp, they have 221 legislators as it stands today. We have Kenya Kwanza itself, 165 MPs. Let me just pick it up in full, Karen. We have Azimio breakaway parties with 14 members of parliament right now. We have ODM rebels. We remember the rebels when they went to the State House, and now they've been dubbed the rebels. 6 MPs so far. Jubilee rebel MPs, 25 MPs, right? Mheshimiwa Yusuf, I hope you're not the rebel. Are you a rebel? You've not categorized yourself as a rebel.
A man of conscience.
Rebel from what?
Conscience.
We are a party.
You're a party, yeah?
Yes, and we exist.
You know
as a
the politics
parliamentary
around
party.
it, yes.
Yeah, but most of it is propaganda because it doesn't look at the complexities of the political realities that we have today. It simply, kind of scats around the issue rather than.
Let me finish up the list
what
then.
has really happened.
Let me finish up
Yeah.
the list first. Then we have independent MPs. We have 11 MPs. So we'll wait to see where this particular flag will be flailing. Is it on the Kenya Kwanza or maybe for the Azimio, who are stoutly against the finance bill? Azimio camp has 127. Azimio 126, excluding rebel MPs, that is Jubilee MPs. Also, we have 1 independent MP from Migori, that is Migori Women Rep, so far. This is how it's going to play out in the House. And I'd ask you also, Mheshimiwa, regarding the neutrality of a speaker, as it is, because he's also giving an inkling of where he's leaning as far as the sentiments are concerned on this finance bill.
Well, I haven't really paid attention to what the Speaker has said. But it doesn't really matter. The Speaker does not have a vote in the House. So for me, he's entitled to his opinion as an individual. But as far as the finance bill is concerned and what would happen in the House, he is merely presiding over the proceedings of the House. At the end of the day, the people who would have a say on whether this financial bill would pass or not are the elected members of Parliament. So I think I wouldn't push it too hard to say that that the Speaker has overstepped his mandate. I would say that he is entitled to his views as an individual Kenyan. But at the end of the day, he would leave that decision for the members of Parliament.
So what do you think about also the president? Because within the finance bill, we have the president or the executive, for that matter, that their salaries will be raised by 112 million shillings. And every Kenyan is, decry the fact that we're having the housing levy, our salaries have almost for the last decade remains the same.
Yeah,
why would the president and his deputy be seeking to have
let's
112
put
within the finance bill?
the whole finance bill in the economic context in which we have. We have a difficult economic situation. We have global economic problems, rising price of fuel. And one would expect in a climate in which the conditions are so hard that in pushing for the financial bill, the executive would make sure that in fact they trim all the expenditures to the minimum. And I fully express my concern about the fact that wages are not going up because of the economic conditions we have. But at the same time, it creates a negative impression in the public eye when the leadership is pushing for an increase of its salaries, its benefits, and so on. I'm categorically opposed to an increase in the salary of the president, the cabinet ministers, members of parliament, and creating positions like us that has a negative impact on our economy. I think this is not the time to add more costs on the taxpayer. So as much as I support some positive aspects of the financial bill, the government itself is facing a credibility problem when it comes to whether they are sincere in cutting wastage, leakage, and fighting corruption. And so these are the things that are making the financial bill a little more difficult to sell as far as the government is concerned, because there are these credibility issues of trust, that there is a trust deficit,
Yes.
rather than a deficit in the financial bill and its objectives. So I think the government also must play its role to make sure that it trims its expenditure. For example, I go to a lot of offices, government offices, where you see beautiful flowers laid out, where you see every room having a color television, where they provide lavish, you get tea, mandazi, samosa, on taxpayers' cost. These things should be cut down and reduced completely, because they add up to the bill, to the expenditure bill of the government. And many other things, like the vehicles, the fuel that is provided to some of the government officials who have 2 or 3 vehicles. These things are not acceptable as far as the public is concerned. They're not necessary, and the president and the government must pay attention to make sure that in fact they cut down on wastage, they cut down on what is known as leakages, which is money that is wasted, and of course they fight very hard against corruption. That way they create a credibility and a trust which would make it much easier for the government to sell its policies.
Thank you.
In terms of development.
Thank you. Right. I come to you, Wilson Sossion, but before that, there's just a highlight here that one of a professor had written regarding the finance bill and how according to him, it will kill the economy. And he quotes, first of all, Arthur Laffer. But before that, he says the Kenya economy is facing a more serious problem called stagflation. And stagflation occurs when there is high inflation and unemployment at the same time. Arthur Laffer opines that increase in taxation rate will lead corresponding increase in tax revenue up to a point of deflection, where a further increase in tax rate will result in a decline in tax revenue. He says in 1980, American presidential candidate Ronald Reagan promised reduction of taxes and argued that this will result in increase in tax revenue in what is popularly known as Reaganomics. It worked perfectly well. Dr. Ruto's government should establish whether the country has reached the deflection point where increase in tax rate will not yield corresponding increase in tax revenue. His argument, he says, is that Kenya has reached the deflection point. Any further increase in taxes will lead to less tax revenue for the state. Further increase in taxes is now being processed is contractionary fiscal policy, which is not desirable at a time of spiraling unemployment and reduction in production. What then is the solution? He says the government should eliminate wastage and corruption, what you've been alluding to, Mheshimiwa Hassan. All public investments should be thoroughly appraised so that projects that yield maximum benefits are undertaken. To enhance local production, taxes on non-essential imports, including anti-dumping tax, should be imposed on imports. Public service should be restructured in a way that unnecessary layers are eliminated, such as include CAS, duplication between county administrators and national government or provincial administration, etc. One of them should be eliminated. Public employees other than those in education, health and security sectors should be hired on contract. In this case, there will be prudent management of human resources in the public sector. Do you think this can be counterproductive when we seek to increase the revenue? Have we reached that inflection point that Professor
those are views,
is talking about?
Those are expert views of Professor, particularly on the proposal of elimination of wastage. That one is not in doubt, it's agreed. Appraisal of public projects so that projects that has direct bearing on growing of the economy and creation of jobs are adopted. Of course, there are other proposals that may not be tenable, but where you talk about the tax collection that we have reached a point he calls in Flawat. That is his own term. I would say in terms of collection of taxes in Kenya, we are still underperforming and under. So when you bring in Reaganomics in an economy where the tax collection was at a high level and no wastage, then we cannot compare the American economy of 1980 and the struggling Kenyan economy of 2023 that has suffered a lot of hemorrhage, a lot of mismanagement, excessive borrowing that is not translating to the genuine services of the people. We are currently at 14% of the GDP in tax collection, which is way below. And in fact, the tax collection or revenue collection measures is going to elevate the tax collection from 2.1 trillion to 2.8 trillion this financial year. Basically, that is actually what is going to result into. And if we compare with what Kibaki did, for Kibaki to manage to turn around the economy in 3 years was to strengthen the revenue collection measures, those who are evading taxes. And those tax evaders have come back again. There's a lot of heavy tax evasion, and that is going to be addressed. And so, trying to say, yes, Kenyans are being overtaxed, I don't think it is right. Looking at the finance bill, and there are about 20 tax break areas. One is on gas, VAT being removed, railway development levy being removed on gas, import declaration fee on gas being removed. Those are 3. And that is going to encourage households to buy gas at the lowest price. I think demonizing the finance bill and inciting the citizens who have not read to understand is not right. The RDL reduced across the board from 2 to 1.5%, VAT on raw materials for fertilizers removed, VAT exempt on materials for manufacture of pharmaceutical removed, VAT exempt on materials for pest control removed, VAT on value-added tea for export removed. So,
there's a paper.
You sound like the finance minister now reading
over the facts.
the finance bill itself.
You had your chance, Omogeni, and when these facts are biting you, don't complain. Reduce tax on monthly rental from 10 to 7.5. Tax exempt on transport of sugar from farm to factory. These are incentives, and if you look at it, the whole finance bill, and I can go on, it's up to 20. And if you look at the whole of finance bill, it is designed to promote domestic manufacturing and production. And we said as Kenya Kwanza, production sector has been ignored and sabotaged. And even slapping taxation on imported goods to limit importation of goods that can be manufactured locally is a way of protecting domestic manufacturing. So, and some of the people who are complaining are those who have benefited along this particular illegitimate business of rendering Kenyans jobless and destroying manufacturing in the country. We want to see the sugarcane farmers in Kenya bouncing back to life and benefiting from their sugarcane farming. And this is what the finance bill is all about. In fact, the enemies of manufacturing, the enemies of job creation are the ones who are fighting the finance bill. And we can go on and on and on. There are a lot of merits in this finance bill. And looking at the voting pattern in Parliament, and this information is with members of Parliament. Members of Parliament are free and independent citizens who can exercise their free will in Parliament in terms of voting. And already close to 221 are in agreement with the bill. So the issue is, now this finance bill is the property of the House. It is a property of the House. It's gone out of the hands of the public, and it will go through the requisite processes of the House. It has been tabled for the first reading. It will be tabled for the second reading. Members of Parliament will ventilate and debate very freely, as provided by the Constitution. It will go through what you call Committee of the Whole House, clause by clause, debated and voted for, and I think we have the best process in Parliament. And finally, the entire document will be voted for by the House. So I don't see any alarm on this. This is one of the many bills of the House. It is the property of the House.
Thank you.
And so I don't see any reason why you should engage in so much debate. And from the comments of the various leaders, it's clear the intentions here is that once it passes, it will be implemented. And what Kenyans should be debating is the implementation structure of the various provisions.
Thank you.
And I dare say the housing levy is not a tax. It is a check-off contributory scheme that will be remitted by the employers to the fund.
Thank you.
And so trying to look like
all right.
It is a
There's
tax,
a very interesting editorial cartoon.
Is misinforming the public.
Right, and I want just to usher, on a lighter note, to usher in Danson Mungatana and welcoming back to the country from South Africa as well. But to begin on a lighter note with President William Ruto depicted there, if we may just have it back, as King Solomon. This is the Solomonic wisdom that he needs now to, you know, be sort of administering right now with this economy. You can see the sword is the finance bill. And whom do we have there? We have Wanjiko and sort of a posy of Gun, and the economy now is the baby. What will the president do? I think he's spoken quite movingly on what he really wants with the finance bill. But between Wanjiko and this other posy of Gun, I don't know if this is the MPs as they are being depicted. What will be your take?
Yeah, it seems from the cartoon the
real baby is
the so-called Wanjiko is saying, let me have the baby so long as it's alive. It seems that he's taking it.
The Wanjiko is taking it.
The Wanjiko is taking it. Anyway, from
if you remember this narrative about the baby and the Solomon.
Yes.
Yes. So is Wanjiko and the economy is the one who is feeling the brunt of the finance bill itself, and with the positive Gun is saying, oh, go full steam ahead and just slander it. So who has the interest of the baby? Is it the MP or
it is the Wanjiko who has the interest? From the way I've seen, because he's the one who seems to be saying, save the baby. But I think it is a wrong depiction to say that actually the intention of the president is to like finish the baby. It seems like the person is suggesting that the president wants to completely destroy the entire thing. I wanted to just take this opportunity to wish the members of parliament, 349 of them, who are going to be debating these matters, very heavy matters, in the House, beginning this week. And one of the good things about our country, which is shown all over the world, including in the continent of Africa, is that we can really disagree and even really, be very democratic about our opinions, and everybody has its say. So for me, I think let everybody have his say and then let the majority have their way. But I'm very impressed by the robust debate that is going on around this debate of the finance bill. My own comment is that we have had a lot of, let me say negative selling of the finance bill. I was at home this weekend and I was reiterating this fact in public meetings that governments don't do business. Governments are not able to go run matatus and whatever. Governments get money. If the county government, the governor, and the president, they get money from taxation or they go into debt. So the previous administration went into a lot of debt. And it is impractical for us to say that this current administration should also go further around the country down the debt pattern. So somehow, like it has been said many times, when you are digging a hole, one of the things you need to do is to stop digging that hole. So we couldn't go down the debt path. So right now, the only available option is taxation. And for me, I like the debate, what is going on. People are saying this and the other. I like the way Kenyans are expressing their views. What I am lacking in this debate is that people are saying, don't tax this, don't tax this, don't tax the other, but they are not proposing an alternative way of revenue collection. Nobody is coming with a different idea. And if we don't have an idea, just admit. And I'm going to urge leaders who are in the opposition because I was expecting, honestly and sincerely, I was expecting that our colleagues on the opposite side would table alternative proposals, saying that if I was in government, this is how I would be raising taxation. This is how I would run the country. Our colleagues are only going up to the point of saying, don't tax here. But they are not going beyond that. Now, that is not leadership. For me, that is not leadership. I have believed that a plan is better than no plan. In fact, a bad plan is better than no plan at all. But when a good plan comes, the bad plan must give way to the good plan. If a better plan comes, the good plan must give way to the better plan. If the best plan comes, then the better plan must give way to the best plan. But we must have a plan, one way or the other. Now, we are not hearing anything on the other side saying we would rather raise revenue this way instead of the way you are raising revenue in this matter. And our colleagues are also not being very sincere. This process of budget is a long process. It starts way back last year. There is the Treasury Secretary begins this process by asking people to go to all the ministries, and they start this way back in October. Is it October, September? Yes, they start back way back, and they are asking all the ministries to submit to him the actual expenditures versus the the proposed expenditure, the budgeted expenditures, so that you can see who has been spending and who was over budgeted. Then they also bring the budget policy paper. It is laid in the House. Members of Parliament are supposed to interact with that and give opinions. And it goes on, the process goes on. By the time it is coming to the level where there's the finance bill, there is enough time for all the leaders who are in the House to be able to look and see, because even the debt management policy is also tabled in the House for discussion and adoption, whether they'll increase the debt ceiling or they're going to operate within the same. By the time we are coming up to the level of the finance bill itself, members of Parliament who are either in opposition or government are sufficiently involved to know what the intentions of the government are. And then we've gone through now the public participation. And in the public participation, we are informed that out of 84 or so interested groups that came before the finance committee, the budget committee, only 74 supported. So there were others who supported, others opposed, but majority opposed the proposals. But still, the one who comes, say, in oil sector, he comes and says, don't tax this. But they're not saying how we should raise revenue to sustain the country and to keep going. So for me, even the public participation was lacking because our leaders were not taking charge. They were not there. People were just doing politics. They were not engaged. And now the cat has bolted. I mean, the horse has bolted, in a sense, because at the time when they needed to engage, they were not there. Even in the public participation, they, in my opinion, sent groups that were not telling Kenyans that let us not go this way, let us go this way. They themselves, as leaders who are opposing this finance bill, they are not telling us, let us not go this way, let us go this way. I have seen the American politics, and I love the way the Democrats would come and say, the Republican plan is a failure. Let us try this plan. If I was president, I would be taxing or I would be raising revenue this way. If I was president, I would cut here, but I would load it on this other side, and I would be able to implement the plan. Here in Kenya, people are saying, oh, we are going to the streets. You are going to the streets instead of coming to engage on the table. You are going to this, you and the guy who elected you to go and make presentations in the House, to go and give us alternative government thinking. And you know, the sad thing is, some of these people have held very senior positions. Some of them claim they have been in parliament for 30, 40 years, you know, and they know the processes. They know what is supposed to happen. They know how you can go about even defeating some of the clauses, seeking amendment some of the clauses, negotiating at the right time. They know. But they sit there and keep telling people stories, you know, and then they wait, then they think that the role of opposition is to oppose, and they oppose. But the role of opposition, leadership in opposition, is a very critical thing. You need to come and say, we're not going to do this, let us do this. And I always look at it like the government in the house. You know, when you propose this and your wife comes and says, no, let's not do that, and she doesn't bring a plan, then the only plan that is on the table is what is the default. If she comes and says, no, let us cut here, but go this way, then you listen. So this is the challenge Kenyans are facing, that there is no leadership in the opposition. The opposition has totally failed. And the only thing they are doing now is to keep on talking about disrupting the economy, doing things that will hurt the name of Kenya at the international level. They are not talking about an alternative plan that will give us hope. We would want to hear, you know, when someone comes and says, like the Honorable Hassan here, Yusuf is saying, there are these cuts that government needs to do. You know, you cannot be having 3 cars fueled by that government. We are not going to have salary increases. Let us save on the flowers. Let us save on unnecessary international trips. Let us do this. If we did this, if I was a leader of opposition, that's what I would do. If we did this, we would save this amount of money. So this amount of money, we don't need to tax people on this and the other and the other. And the country will be able to run this way. This is the leadership that I'm challenging. The guys in opposition, those who claim to have been having the idea of setting up an alternative government, those who said that if they were president, they would do this. I would want to hear what those presidential candidates are saying.
Thank you.
And the deputy presidents. They're not telling us anything. They're just saying it's bad. It's bad, so what do we do? You know? So for me, I would encourage our colleagues, let us practice responsible politics. Let us give alternative opinions, alternative government. Let us be serious. Let us engage. Let us, in fact, they have received their money from political parties. What stops them from engaging economists, you know, accountants, the professionals, to release alternative government policy? Nothing is coming up. And I'm sorry to say that our opposition colleagues are performing below average. Asante sana.
Below average. I think you're taking mental note of that. But let me hear from Mheshimiwa Hassan, because we have plans from Azimio who are trying to push for an open vote, where MP's vote is recorded and voting sheet made public in what is in a parliamentary lingo called division. And this is meant to, of course, make some of MPs who are voting for this particular bill appear like the enemies of the people. The coalition also is planning to then collect data on the open voting and publicize it in its media platform to expose MPs who vote in favor of more taxes. They will be labeling them, as I mentioned, enemies of the people. So in this particular voting, will the MPs as well who are voting for this particular bill be having trepidation that this may also affect, you know, their voting or the voters' opinion in 2027? Because now, if the president has been very categorical that he's whipping all the MPs that you should actually pass this, failure to do this, there are consequences. It is quite a consequential voting. This will be.
I wouldn't say that this is different from any other major voting that has taken place in the House. I've been in the House, this is my 4th term, and we've had some very controversial, some very negative bills that have come up, and there was contestation both in the debate and in the voting. So I don't have any problem for the Azimio faction party or the Kenya Kwanza party mobilizing its vote and making sure that every member of their political persuasion votes the way they want. But I think at the end of the day, the onus is on the member of parliament. And sometimes members of parliament have to make very hard decisions. Decisions based on whether some of those bills and some of the decisions that they're making are good for the country. And when it comes to the financial bill, because it has been so demonized and politicized and weaponized, now there isn't really any rationality in many of the debates you see. Even the cartoon that you have shown us has already taken sides. Is that at the end of the day, we will be debating the bill very clearly, and every member of parliament knows the burden and the pressure on them. But I think what would happen is that they would vote with their conscience, whether they think that particular bill is right for the country, right for moving our country forward. But the question I ask myself is, what is the alternative to the financial bill? You know, we're going to have our budget on the 16th of June. If there are amendments that are going to be made, let them be presented in the House. Let's debate them. Let's argue them. And let's not have a predetermined perception, blackmail, or pressure on the members of parliament. Let's have it on the floor of the House. Every point should be looked at, And finally, we vote on it. And in a democracy, you vote, and the majority would always have their say, whether you like it or not. And this is what is going to happen. And I don't think there's any fear on the part of any member of parliament if they have made the right decision in voting for or against this particular bill.
All right. Honorable Sosyon.
Yes.
No, I think it's Honorable Omogeni Deniu. Omogeni, first of all, you need to take up the challenge that has been thrown on the table, that you don't have any requisite plan up your collective sleeves. You seem to be working against the finance bill, but when you're called upon to give your concrete plan, you fail, woefully inadequate to actually give any alternative.
Dubal, we can come to this show, be very dishonest to Kenyans, but those who watch, they know. You just go to the Standard, the front page. It says the executive is adamant that no matter what Kenyans feel, they will have their way. How can you debate with such a government? You have an executive that is telling you, we are going to be very dictatorial in this. They are issuing threats to their own members of parliament. You have seen, I wish the statement that is being made here was to be a statement that is objective. I wish we reflected on the behavior of President Biden, who cut short his trip to South Asia to go back and sit down with the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Kevin McCarthy, a Republican, to have a useful engagement on how to deal with the debt bill in the US. So the overture should be from the other side. You can't throw it to our side when you are moving around chest thumping and saying you will push this through the throat of Kenyans. How do you engage with such a party that does not want to listen to anybody, that is issuing threats? So it should be the other way around, debate. If we really cared about Kenyans, then the government should actually be pausing and listening to what Mwananchi is saying down there. And if you live in this country, Dibal, you have seen the mood, what the mood is like on the ground. You can listen to Kenyans and you can feel them. I told you that close to 1,000 Kenyans sent their memorandum to the House, airing opposition to this particular bill. But you have not seen an overture from the government saying, we now want to sit down and listen to the opposition. We are not here to give ideas to the government how to govern. We are, as opposition, in office to oppose bad laws. Anything that is putting a burden on Kenyan, anything that is going to make the cost of living in this country to spiral out of hand. That's why we are members of the opposition. If you see bad laws being proposed, like what is contained in this finance bill, you come out to oppose. What engagement can you have, Dibal, with a government that proposes to amend the Employment Act in Section 31 to introduce a housing levy in a financial bill that is supposed to propose taxation measures to the House? And as you know, I'm a senator, and my role under Section 96 is to defend devolution. Mm-hmm. This particular bill has clauses that concern counties, and the Constitution dictates that these kind of bills should be considered by both houses. But the government wants to push it through because it does not want the other house, the Senate, to look at it. So it's not even an issue of telling people that you are going to the floor and engaging in a vote. We have to speak capturing the aspirations of the common Mwananchi. The people are over and above the MPs. When I was in Gishu, I told you, somebody said there is no MP who fears the people anymore. Why? The government has demonstrated, Huda, that if you reject your member of parliament, the president will even promote them and appoint them to some positions in government. So there is no MP who will be moved by this idea of we are going to have a division and then our names will be profiled. They are telling us that Ruto, unfortunately, wants to reduce a voter to be a nothing. If you vote out your MP, the following day will be rewarded with a senior position in government. So the only alternative in this debate is to go back to the people, and if the government wants to push this through the throats of Kenyans, we go back to the people. Let me tell you, don't place any hope in Parliament. That's the reality. Parliament is a massaging tool for the executive. They will all be competing to see how to please the executive. You will not see an objective debate like what I saw in the UK during the Brexit. You know, if you watched the Brexit in the US during the tenure of Theresa May, even members of our own party came out and said this proposal for us to do a Brexit, the way it is structured, it will not serve our people. It will injure the economy of the UK government. And they rebelled and voted against it. But you will never see that kind of parliament. I can guarantee you, take that to the bank. You will not see that kind of parliament. You know the proposals that are being made by Mheshimiwa, Honorable Member for Kamkunji. I said here before that if we did an audit of our constitution, you will stop this nonsense of saying you want to have a burden poor Kenyans with taxation. If you audit functions and look at the duplication between national government and county government, you will have enough saving to run this country. But we want to look for easy options of saying we want our friends who are having jobs to stay in jobs. We don't want to touch them because we want to be politically correct. But on the other hand, the easier target is that poor mwananchi, the common man down there. As Azimio, we have made a proposal. We have told the government that don't tax the common man to pay 50 cabinet administrative secretaries. What Mheshimiwa has told you here this morning.
I just want to inform my brother, whom we were in with the same alliance in the election, the Azimio alliance. Azimio fully supported the housing program. Uhuru supported the housing program.
Through the housing levy?
Please. Yes. Our leader, Raila Amolo Odinga, was fully in support of reintroducing the housing levy. Yes. So what has changed about the housing policies of Azimio since the elections? Is it because we are now in the opposition that we have to reject because it has the rubber stamp of Ruto?
Good question. Good question.
And are these houses going to be built for Ruto, or for Uhuru, or for Raila? They're going to be built for the Kenyan people.
Good question. I think you should mull over that. We take a short break. It is 8 o'clock on the nose. 8 o'clock on the nose. We'll circle back with that. No, we need to take a station break. 8 o'clock on the nose. We take a station break right now. When we circle back, of course, pivotal question: what has really changed from the manifesto of the Azimio Umoja as far as the housing levy is concerned? We found that it was in the previous administration, but also that was shelved. But right now there is a resumption of it through the Kenya Kwanza, but Azimio is totally also against it. So what has changed? That is a question that we seek to answer from the other side of the break. You're watching Standpoint. Don't go away.